So now that you've regained your seats after our check-in exercise that we do at the start of every lecture, I'd like to ask you now to pause for a moment and think about what is necessary in the room in order to complete that check-in exercise together as a group. Yeah, indeed, it's psychological safety. Psychological safety where you feel that you're heard and you're supported, and it's safe enough for you to express perhaps a message that comes from a vulnerable place. So we covered that last week, the importance of psychological safety in change management. In order for change management to be effective, it is really important. And more specifically, what was the key determinant for psychological safety? It was trust. So without further ado, I'm going to invite you to carry out a self-reflection exercise. So I'd like you to take a pen and paper, and I'm going to give you a few moments to think about two people in your life. One person who you trust and one person who you don't trust. And next to their names, I would like you please to write one sentence about why you trust person A and why you do not trust person B. So I'll give you a few moments now. So as you've seen in this exercise, the person that you trust is indeed somebody who you are close to, whereas the person that you don't trust, there's something that's missing. Indeed, as we have seen a bit last week, and what we're going to really deep dive into this week, is that trust is the #1 determinant for the quality of relationships. In fact, trustworthiness is so key for a leader, an effective leader, to lead their team, especially through change. So what is trust? So over the last 12 years working with many clients and organizations, I have been witnessing endless numbers of exchanges of people who talk about trust. But actually at the end of the day, every person has their own definition of trust. I realized we just throw in trust here and throw in trust there. You know, is trust built? Is it earned or is it given? How easy is it to break trust? And how easy or not so is it to recover trust? So with everyone who's got their own definition, I came up with a model which is called the Thrice model. So here it is, it's right here. So as you see, the Thrice model is the trust model with 6 components. And it's called Thrice, and we're going to go one by one through them. So we have the first one, which is transparency. So transparency in what? So how transparent are you with your intentions, with your motivations, and with your actions? Then we have H for humility. We all know that it's always difficult to admit to our mistakes, especially at work. But it's about admitting mistakes and also asking for help and potentially taking risks. R is for reliability. How reliable a person is depends on how well they keep to their promises and they follow through to what they said they would do. The fourth component here is about integrity, and integrity is very much about the ethics of a person, the honesty. How honest are they? How aligned are they with their integrity? And how consistent are they in their behavior? The C is for credibility. So how skillful, how much experience and how much knowledge does a person have to effectively carry out their obligations in the workplace? And last but not least, E for empathy. So empathy, which is all about the ability to provide compassion, to understand other people, and to see the same things from a different perspective. So let's deep dive into each one of these. So let's take transparency for the beginning. So when it's absent, what's happening? What's happening in the relationship? Well, usually, if perhaps sometimes you could be in a meeting and you could notice that somebody is withholding information. So if they're withholding information, or perhaps it could be that you are receiving undue pressure to complete a deadline and it doesn't make sense to you. So you're receiving all this pressure from the hierarchy, and they're creating a very stressful environment, but they're not necessarily explaining to you why. So this lack of transparency could be one of the reasons why you would lack trust with a given person. Humility. So what does it look like at work? Well, like I said, it's about admitting to our mistakes rather than playing the blame game, trying to put the fault on others. When it's present, you feel humbled typically because somebody's showing their vulnerability and they're saying, hands up, yeah, okay, I've messed up, I forgot about this, or I wasn't aware of that. That creates a special bond because then we feel safer in the presence of that person. Now, reliability, well, reliability is when it's not there at work, what's actually happening? Are you having to chase somebody? Well, you told me you'd hand the report in, last week, and I still haven't received it. So that person is showing that they can't really be trusted when it comes to reliability. However, when you can rely on somebody, then you feel safe and trust that person, and you know that the job is going to get done. You know that the message is going to be passed through effectively and received effectively, for instance. So moving into integrity, you could be in a meeting where privately with one of the people in the meeting, they had agreed to your proposal. And then you go into the meeting with this person, assuming that you two are both aligned on this proposal. And that person says the exact opposite in the meeting. So what's happening there? Well, there is definitely an absence of integrity because all of a sudden their behavior is inconsistent. So naturally, there will be a lack of trust around the integrity component with that person. However, if that person was to sit straight at the meeting and say exactly to everybody around the table what they had told you about your proposal, then you know that you can trust them because they are aligned and their behaviours are consistent. Moving on to credibility, well, let's take for example, and it's often the case, where you have technical managers that have been promoted to managers, people managers. And so whilst they were brilliant technically, they don't have necessarily all the skill set to manage people and teams effectively. So what's happening to their credibility? Well, unless they put their hand up and go, yes, okay, I don't know how to do this, I'm trying to upskill, I'm taking a training course on people management, then this can flop. And when others notice that their credibility has gone out the window, then that could be a little bit painful for them later. And last but not least, empathy. So imagine a workplace where there is no empathy and you just got to get it done, and there is no compassion whatsoever if there were budget cuts, if there are resource restrictions. And this is really very much linked to empathy, and particularly as a leader it's so important to be able to show that empathy and take the time and remain connected with our team members and our stakeholders as well. So that is the Thrice model. Indeed, we are not machines. I'm going to put it back up actually, because if you look at it, what can we do with that? Because when we say, I don't trust you anymore, it's far too vague. However, if we can be specific, and if they're just one of these 6 components that are missing, then we can transform a conversation. So it's about recognizing what component is absent, understanding what happened. Why is it that you think so? That, for example, humility is missing. What happened that made you believe this and and then now distrust that person linked to this missing component? And then it's about having the conversation in order to restore trust. And so by being able to refer to this model, it will help deflect the conflict and the pressure. And in fact, it can support a constructive conversation. So I'm sure you've got some questions, but before we continue, I'd like you now to go into small groups of 3, and I'd like you to each choose one component in the Thrice model and discuss it for a few minutes together. And I'd like you please to then present to the rest of us what you explored in that component, and also how it could pay the price for a leader to lack that specific component in the relationships with their internal customers and with their external customers. So off you go, and then you'll be presenting back to us.